Hello and welcome to the reduced version of our March Madness bracket breakdown. Now we did just film a video that is going to be more in-depth analysis for each of these games and the matchups. This is going to be more of a brief overview of our bracket, give you some tips, but keeping it short as well. So without further ado, let's break into the top part of the region. So in the South region, some upsets, but not as many really going farther in the tournament. Do really see this as chalk as you get farther in. I'm not high on Auburn as a team. However, I do have them getting to the Final Four here, and I think part of that is due to the weaker draw they have. Not high on Michigan State. Iowa State's banged up. Texas A&M got a brutal draw with Yale, so I really do see them going down to Yale. And Michigan's not going to give them much of a test. So it's a very interesting region. However, I see it really going as chalk. The big thing, Yale, they're going to attack Texas A&M where Texas A&M is not strong, and that's a great opportunity to upset a team. People really love San Diego over Michigan, and I think that type of media hype actually plays into this matchup, and Michigan's well aware of it. And I don't think San Diego is going to be able to exploit Michigan like many people are saying, so I'm actually going with Michigan there to actually also beat Yale and get to the Sweet 16, which is probably going to be a rare pick. New Mexico over Marquette. Not as high on Marquette, especially after that Big East tournament. They're very razor thin in terms of quality production, and New Mexico should be able to match them from a guard play perspective and limit Cam Jones. Now going over to the East region, as you can see here, this is where we see more, less chalk, really, more upsets. Duke getting knocked out by Arizona. Not high on this Duke team. Cooper Flagg might be injured. He'll probably be playing, but you don't know what type of Cooper Flagg you're getting, right? Ankle injuries don't just go away. They're going to be there till the end of the season, so he's not going to be at his best like you would expect. Malik Brown, I believe is his name. Brown, he's not playing, most likely for the whole tournament, which hurts them. He's a great defender. And Duke really hasn't been tested as much, especially in conference, and they're a younger team, so I really have my doubts about this team. And I think you get a good team like Arizona, who's already beat them before on a neutral court, is really going to test them, and ultimately where I see them crumble. Now looking down at the bottom of the bracket, VCU going to the Sweet 16, right? They match up well with BYU, and not as high on this Wisconsin team. It'll be I really see that VCU Wisconsin team as game as a coin flip, and rather take VCU because of their ability to generate turnovers and physicality and athleticism. Now, St. Mary's over Bama is probably going to be a controversial pick. However, because Bama plays so fast, St. Mary's plays slow and is going to be able to guard the perimeter. Bama shoots a ton of threes, but not as great at shooting them. They're going to be taking very difficult shots against St. Mary's, and I can really see that game not being played to the style that Alabama wants it to go to, and that's why they're ultimately going to get knocked off, because it's going to be a very ugly game, and Alabama plays pretty basketball and will not thrive well in that ugly, disgusting type of game. And St. Mary's ultimately edges them, gets to the Elite Eight, and then Arizona ultimately knocks them off, right? St. Mary's offensive production isn't spectacular, and so I wasn't really looking to take them far in this bracket until they were matched up with Alabama because of the style of play difference between the teams. And then you're going to see St. Mary's ultimately lose to Arizona just because of the lack of offensive production. They're not going to be able to hurt Arizona by playing ugly basketball like they could do in Alabama, and Arizona's going to be able to edge them on that regard. Now, going down to the Midwest region, I have Houston. This is somewhat chalk, right? A 1-2, the only 1-2 that I have in the Elite Eight here, we have at CLV Betting Academy. Gonzaga is going to give Houston a test. That is kind of a scary point and something to consider, especially if you're filling this out as a pool where you're trying to game the system for extra points. This is a bracket that I filled out on behalf of CLV Betting Academy as the lead analyst, expecting what's going to happen. Now, that isn't set up to a way where we're going to win a pool with this or trying to maximize our odds to win a pool. It is just how I think it's going to happen. So you could ultimately avoid taking Houston to the Final Four if you're worried about that early upset. However, I do believe they're going to get beyond that. High Point knocking off Purdue. Purdue is a fraudulent team, and High Point actually matches up well there, and is going to be the more athletic team in that matchup. And so it leads to an interesting conundrum where the mid-major team actually is the more athletic team, which you don't really see in the tournament as much. Illinois, that is going to be a scare that they have against Texas and Xavier. that really could either go either way. Illinois is a team that I'm looking to buy low on. I think they are very good and just have been sick during most of the year. And so it's a great opportunity to buy low, but the matchup is not the best. So it will be interesting to see how well they do there. But Illinois ultimately advancing over Kentucky. Now, Kentucky, we touched about in this, our more in-depth analysis video on why Kentucky could get scared by Troy and maybe knocked off. Now, I think they'll get by, but it is very reasonable to see Kentucky lose that game. And so if you're really looking for that long shot upset, take a look at Troy. They do things well that Kentucky does not do as well. Things that Troy does bad, Kentucky also won't be able to take advantage of it. So it leads you to an interesting thought, right? You could take a shot there, especially if you, in your pool, taking Troy would give you extra bonus points for that seed difference. It's something to take a look at. UCLA, Utah State, either way, that really is going to be a toss-up game. UCLA is favored by -4.5. I do think UCLA will win, but not as confident on that one either way. But Tennessee is going to handle both of them, in my opinion. And this will be an interesting matchup or rematch between Tennessee and Illinois, where I think Tennessee will take it. I think they have gone even better than they were when they first played Illinois. And because of their defense and physicality, now they can actually score the ball a little bit, as they've shown at the end of the year. I do think they'll take that, but that should be a close game between Illinois and Tennessee as well. And ultimately, Houston winning out, they do similar things to Tennessee, but their physicality is just unmatched. Their experience is unmatched, and now this team can actually score the ball. So while they have a tough road, Clemson's a tough team to beat, Gonzaga's a tough team to beat, Tennessee's a tough team to beat. This is a really hard region. Houston really is that much better than the rest of them, where you can trust them to get out. Now, if you want to take a couple long shot flyers from a betting perspective, I think Illinois is worth it. I think you could even take a look at Xavier if they get there. Clemson's not a bad look, and there's a lot of teams where you could take a look at if you want like a Final Four future on them. That is not a bad idea. Now going over to the West region, this is all chalk in the first round, and then it gets a little crazy after that. Now Memphis, they're going to be a popular pick to get upset. Most people are going to have Colorado State because of the missing Tyrese Hunter. However, I think Memphis is very underrated in the metrics because they did not care about half their games they played in the American, and they're actually a very good team when they care, and obviously when is a better time to care than the tournament. So they're going to get by Colorado State, but then ultimately they'll fall short to Maryland, who is a very good team. We've been on them. If you've been following us since the start of the season, we gave out Maryland to win the championship before this year actually even started. And they're just going to be better than Memphis. I think that's really where you're going to see them miss Tyrese Hunter. If that game really gets down to it, I don't expect it to. I think Maryland will advance through that pretty easily. Texas Tech should handle Missouri pretty easily. A lot of people are taking Drake as a popular upset pick. Be aware that they've been very fortunate with some positive variance. They've gone to overtime, it feels like 10 times during the Missouri Valley season. They got very fortunate with how games go. They play very slow, which, again, limits possessions and helps them from an underdog perspective. But that Drake team is not as good as some of the other Drake teams that we've seen. And while it is a new coach and relatively new system, I don't trust them to win that game like other people might. Now, coming down to this relatively big upset, probably the biggest of this region, is going to be Kansas beating St. John's. Now, these are two very similar teams with very similar profiles. That Kansas was ranked or number one to start the year, which really doesn't mean anything, but it's testament to the talent they have on that team. Both teams can guard the ball really well. Both teams are not great offensively, right? And so the reason why I really do believe that Kansas is going to beat St. John's is that the conferences the two played in, I think people have a misperception of what they were, right? And not even the Big 12. Everyone knows the Big 12 is great. The Big East is overrated, in my view, is the view we hold as a group at CLV Betting Academy. And yes, St. John's was able to go through the Big East pretty easily, but I think the competition they were beating, it doesn't mean as much, and that they're very vulnerable to get knocked off because they're not great offensively. They don't shoot threes well. They really struggle to score during some periods. And so it really just leaves St. John's vulnerable, and I think this Kansas team is going to be able to take advantage of that and ultimately knock them off. Now, Kansas, Texas Tech, this is where I think Kansas's offensive woes are really going to hurt them. They're not going to be able to score on the same level that Texas Tech can, and Texas Tech should be able to edge them out. And then Maryland, this is going to be another upset pick. While the seed difference isn't big, everyone loves Florida. Most of your brackets, people are probably going to take Florida very far. Maryland's top 5, the last time I checked, was graded as the highest analytically 5 of any possible 5 in college basketball. And so in a setting like this, you're really going to let these guys run out, right? You're not playing a whole season. It's now do or die. And so you're going to have the best five on the floor pretty much the whole time, and really going to allow them to compete with these top teams like Florida and whoever they may face beyond this. And so I really do think they're going to be able to knock Florida off and give them that scare. Maryland has lost a ton of close games. That is just unlucky variance, whatever it is. And so while they are ranked extremely high, I think 10th in a lot of metrics, they could be ranked even higher if those had gone their way. They've just been incredibly unlucky. And so that team as a whole, I think, is even better than what the metrics are saying, and really are going to give Florida a run for the money and ultimately knock them off. And then this Maryland Texas Tech matchup is a really tough matchup. Ultimately, I see it going towards Texas Tech. However, you could really spill it either way. But I do think this is where Texas Tech takes the cake, especially if you have Maryland knocking off Florida. Yes, the game to go to the Final Four is a very important game, but you could see some sort of mini hangover, right, because of the emotional high of beating Florida that game before, and I think that also leans it towards Texas Tech as well. So, out of the Final Four, Auburn, Texas Tech, Arizona, and Houston. Like I mentioned before, I'm not as high on Auburn. I think this is a game where you're going to see Texas Tech elevate themselves above Auburn. You could even see an issue with Chad Baker-Mazara doing something dumb. This Auburn team, while they have a high ceiling, I think they have a lower floor than most people assume just because of the shenanigans and whatever happens with them, right? People forgot that they had to fly their plane back to Alabama because there was a scuffle on the plane, right? Whatever's going on, I don't think this Auburn team has the connection and just tranquility to be able to elevate themselves beyond this level. I think they have an easy path to get here, but ultimately not going to edge out Texas Tech and get to the championship. And then Houston, with their physicality and ability to score, elevates them above any other team. I see them beating Arizona, and then ultimately in the championship between Texas Tech and Houston, I have Houston beating Texas Tech, battle for Texas on the biggest stage, and Kelvin Sampson ultimately cutting down the nets, something he's been knocking on the door for a while now in the recent years, and this is the team that he's going to be able to do it with.